This is the Speak USA podcast. Welcome. I'm your host, Cliff Zentgraf, and we are going to talk about how to make our democracy stronger and how to protect it. And I am going to welcome my first repeat guest, Martha. You're back.
Thank you for having me.
I don't know.
Back.
It kind of feels like you never left, actually, because I see you. You know, we're seeing each other all the time. But I'm so glad you're back. And we scheduled this pretty quickly, right? Mm-hmm. We had a little conversation at an event this week, and you said, "Let's do this," and I said, "Let's do this."
Yes.
So here we are, and I'm really glad you're back. And let me also introduce Fred Hofstetter. Fred, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody.
All right, keep saying hi to everybody so the camera.
Hi, everybody, so the camera sees me.
Keep going.
Keep going. Hi, I'm Fred Hofstetter. I'm a friend of Martha's in a veterans organization that she has, that we're all in, called Support and Defend. And I'm a retired Army officer that lives here in the San Antonio area. Care deeply about veterans issues and the proper use of our military in the current government we're in.
Fred, we talked about, we want to share that you're both veterans. And so maybe share a little bit more, and then Martha, I'll come back to you. But Fred, share a little bit more about what you did in the military.
Okay, I spent 21 and a half years in the Army, commissioned out of Texas A&M, went initially into the infantry and did a tour in Europe, been out in California and a bunch of other places. And then eventually ended up in Special Forces in about 77, I guess. And got to travel all over the Middle East, working with local nationals and doing some foreign internal development work over in the Middle East. Came back and spent my last 3 or 4 years in the Pentagon in the Army Operations Center looking at what was going on in the Middle East, and deployed over for Desert Shield and Desert Storm for about a year and a half, and then came back and retired out of the Pentagon. Retired as a lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, my goodness. And Martha, you also retired as lieutenant colonel.
Yes,
correct?
I did.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What was your main job while you were in
My main job in the Army was taking care of soldiers and families. After Vietnam, we recognized that there's an enormous amount of stress on soldiers and their families when they deploy. And in a very practical sense, it causes casualties, both to the soldier in question and the people around him, and of course casualties to the family as well. So the Department of Defense really dedicated itself to creating a comprehensive support system for soldiers, Marines, Navy, and their families. Mm-hmm. So it was my job primarily to administer those programs for 24 years.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's cliche, but thank you both for your service to our country, and I think in a very special way, it gives you a platform to be able to speak about what's going on in the country right now. Mm-hmm. Martha, you have organized, I think you did it, organized a veterans group.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about this veterans group that you've put together.
Well, about a year ago, when some of us started getting very concerned about the way the government was going, I was participating in a lot of activities to encourage people to get engaged in what's going on and to be aware. And during that time, it occurred to me that there was one group that's really important to me that wasn't very visible, and that was military people. That's not surprising, in my opinion, because I think military people tend to kind of stand back and don't want to draw a lot of attention to themselves. But on the other hand, military people have an unprecedented kind of trust and respect. And so it occurred to me that if military people could make themselves visible on some of these issues, civilians would trust them because they know of their experience and they know of their commitment to the country.
Well, and you know, we're in San Antonio, and in San Antonio, Military City, USA, mm-hmm. there's such I guess an affection, maybe I think be a good way to put it, for what military service members do, what military service member families
yes.
Do. And you know, to the extent that's true all over the country, it's especially true here, I think in San Antonio. And so the group that you formed, what's the name of it? again? The group
Support
is
and
called
Defend.
Support and Defend.
And let me add a footnote there.
Please.
After we named it that, we discovered there are a lot of organizations called Support and Defend.
So you did not submit a trademark for
Who
a
knew?
register.
We're soldiers, you know.
Trademark. Well, I
we added
somehow
to-
don't think anybody's going to complain too much.
Well, so we added to that Veterans Defending Democracy, which I think was a tagline that Fred was responsible for.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that, and it's so important. So this group, what have you been doing?
Our initial mission, as we defined it, because we wanted it to be narrow enough so that it would be distinctive and accomplish something practical, is to organize a group of veterans, nonpartisan, who want to talk to the community about the misuse of the military and the right of someone to disobey an illegal order.
Wow. That is a topic that has been in the news
Yes.
lately. How do you feel about Senator Kelly?
Well, there's a national organization, excuse me. There's a national organization that recently asked us and a lot of other veterans to make a short video and put it in a collage that will be shown nationally, in which all of us express our support for Captain Kelly.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that so much, and it's unfair. He is honoring his oath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's being criticized for it. So, anyway, let's get back to Support and Defend.
Yes.
So the group, tell me what the group's been doing. There's a lot.
I'm going to turn that over to Fred.
The first thing that, after a whole bunch of meetings we had where we were just fiddling with what our mission was and what we really wanted to do, Martha helped set up a press conference that we had out on the front steps of City Hall last summer, and it was about 900 degrees outside, but it was wonderful, right in the middle of the morning, and we had 6 veterans get up and talk about what they felt about what was the proper use of the military. At that time, we were worried because active duty Marines had been deployed to Los Angeles, which was just not right. And we had the National Guard on federal orders going to several cities that was really pushing the limits of what was legal for the National Guard to do. We didn't have much press there, but we had a lot of people showed up and applauded, and it was a lot of fun to do that. And then we did a veterans story night where people talked about some of the same sort of things and just anything they wanted to talk about at a local coffee shop. And then the next thing we got involved with was doing a show with David Martin Davies out at La Tuna down in San Antonio, where he wanted to talk about what was the proper role for dissent in America. And we kind of took it upon ourselves to be a part of that and, emphasize what we as military and retired military could do as a part of that effort.
And what is the proper role of dissent?
It's been a part of the military for a long time. If you receive an unlawful order, you're supposed to dissent. It's you're supposed to follow the order, but you're supposed to let somebody know that they're not doing the right thing. And we've seen war crimes occur all the way since World War II up to as of late, where people have dissented and said, "No, sir, I'm not going to do that because it's a war crime," and it's something we need to remember we can do and we should do.
Is there a channel? In a lot of organizations, there is a channel where people who are on the front lines have a way to communicate back up the chain that there's, and it's not necessarily even like an unlawful order or a legal order, just something they deeply disagree with. Is there such a thing? Is there
Inspectors
that kind of
General?
Okay, that's called the Inspector General.
Right, and they were the guys that a lot of them got fired by the current administration when they came in. But everybody's always got the opportunity to go to an Inspector General. completely confidentially and lay out a problem that they've found in the military.
Yeah, and I'll ask a rhetorical question. There's sure been, do y'all think there have been a lot of people fired whose job it is to watch over and make sure we're following our laws like we're supposed to?
It appears that they have. Inspectors general, JAG officers.
Yeah.
They're trying to create a situation where there's no evaluation of what's happening.
Yeah.
The other thing I'd like to say about, this question of disobeying illegal orders is there are no textbook answers. Let's say I'm a private or a lieutenant and I think someone has asked me to do something that's illegal. There's no book where you can go check, oh yes, that's illegal. There are certainly some broad things that are outlined in the Geneva Convention, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, law of land warfare. But the people that I'm concerned about are the soldiers who think there's something wrong. They'll most likely be young and they don't know quite what to do about it. So one of the things that we've emphasized, because we really don't have access to talking to military people, is when we talk to civilians, I like to remind them that you're parents and grandparents of young people who are probably in the military, and they may be confronted with making a decision on their own about what's right and wrong. You can't tell them the answers, but at least talk to them now so that they are mentally prepared that they may be in that kind of situation, and at least be aware that there are inspectors general or whatever other alternative is available to them.
Yeah, to let them know where to go.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like so many other situations in life where somebody is trying to pursue some course of action and they just don't know what the resources are that are available to them. They don't know what the structures are that are available. That sounds really powerful to me, to help them understand what to do. And it's aligned with our mission, right? Because
Yes.
what we're doing at Speak USA is to try to help people who want to act but don't know how to act. Here's all the things that you can do.
Yes.
Okay, so we noted that Support and Defend, your organization, has done many things, and I think we're on item 1 still. So what's item 2? Let's pick one. So let's see. I've already forgotten. What did we talked about so far? Is City Hall.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's something else that Support and Defend has done?
Well, we now have a lot of ways that you can get in touch with us.
Okay. Oh, is this my cue?
Well, you can do it
Yeah,
now or later.
I was going to do it at the end, but I'm doing it now.
Yeah. We have a website. We have Facebook. We're on socials because we are trying to reach out to other veterans and build this core of people who will be willing to use their knowledge and experience to help solve some of the most troubling problems that we're ever going to face in this country.
I have no idea if those QR codes are going to work, but at the very end, I will get up and hold it right in front of that camera. How's that?
That's good. Thank you.
So what are those what are the QR codes? Where do they take you? What are they for?
They take us to our website where you can learn what our mission is and then find other ways to get in touch with us. Tells people activities that we're involved in. There's a great activity we're going to be involved in on President's Day. Like back on Veterans Day when we had veterans telling their stories. On President's Day, we're going to join with other people who are going to read short excerpts from great speeches from great presidents.
Oh, I love that.
Because we think there are multiple opportunities to communicate with people and help us remember what our legacy is. And I've listened to the people rehearsing for this, and it's kind of goosebumpy to listen to.
What is the thing Teddy Roosevelt? I saw this and I reposted it just a couple of weeks ago. Teddy Roosevelt, he said in so many words, if your country's asking you to do the wrong thing, you should do the right thing. Yeah, that it's your duty. Duty to do so. I think you all had a group in the MLK March.
Yes, we did.
Year. Yeah, one of the largest.
Soldiers always love a good march.
One of the largest. One of the largest MLK marches in the country. You all were there. And anything else, or are we missing anything that group's done?
Well,
lately? Well, I think you've been going to facilities. Yes. or is that separate?
Oh, you're talking about ICE detention
Yeah,
facilities?
correct.
Actually, that's another project.
That's
I'm like,
another.
super community organizer, you know.
Yes.
But
yes.
but eventually they come together. I've been volunteering to go to the Cross Point ICE processing center. They do detain people there, but the primary job that they have there is to review people's status. And so they give them appointments. ICE gives them appointments, and they come and look at their paperwork. And a couple of years ago, you would have had your paperwork reviewed, and we would have been told to come back in 3, 6, or 12 months because you have some kind of legal status in the country. But what we see now is people come and they don't always come back out. They get detained. We talk to their families who are forced to wait outside. They're not allowed to go inside. The waiting room, by the way, is outside, regardless of the weather. And we learn from those families that it appears that the ICE officers there are just looking for some kind of pretext to deport someone, or most often they send them off to these prisons in Dilley and Pearsall and LaSalle and so on. It seems...
You know, that's really interesting, Martha. You just said something that I hadn't thought about, that not too long ago, this was an administrative step,
Yes.
essentially. Now and you can just see it. It's got to tie back to a policy decision to say, from now on, I want you to find a reason to say no
Yes.
effectively,
It's,
right?
it's very clear.
There's a quota of 3,000 from Stephen Miller up in the White House.
And that
3,000 a day.
And that is so wrong.
Yes.
That is not, you know, how does that have anything to do with whether someone should be detained or not, right? That should be an issue of law, right?
Yes.
Not an issue that I need 3,000 people
Yes.
today.
And we see other people who have been picked up from the street. You know, somebody's driving to work, or he and his wife are in the car and they stop and take the husband out. Then the family comes to the detention center trying to find out what happened to them. Sometimes these folks will come out with an ankle monitor. We don't know why, because when they were stopped, they didn't violate any traffic laws. They were just going to work. Sometimes they don't come out. We saw a case the other day where there was apparently nothing wrong with this man's paperwork, but the ICE folks said, okay, we're going to send you to Pearsall for 2 months until you get a court appointment. And I'm thinking, aren't you supposed to get a court appointment and then it's decided if you go to prison? So that's what makes the whole thing seem very erratic to me. So we have volunteers there that do what I call aid and comfort. You know, we stand out on the public sidewalk. We can't be on their property, but we greet people, offer them coffee, water, when it's raining, umbrellas, when it's cold, blankets. And we have some really wonderful retired VA social workers who are out there. And when somebody comes out and their life has just fallen apart and they're devastated and sobbing because they've just been told that their spouse is going to be shipped back, in most cases, to a prison, but sometimes to a country, they're there to comfort them.
So many things that you make me want to talk about. One is I think we ought to cover the ground that we are party to treaties. Our country is party to treaties where we accept asylum seekers, and a U.S. treaty is U.S. law. There is no difference between the two, and that's very intentional. So these people have violated no laws. Yet, to your point, they're being sent to prison before they have their time in court.
Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like the America that doesn't sound like the way America is supposed to work.
No, that's not my America. And I recently got kind of up in arms with our county commissioner because he came to a city council meeting and lectured everybody who came to express their concern about ICE in our community. And his answer was, you must obey the rule of law. And then he said, you shouldn't try to obstruct ICE officials because they're just our neighbors and family members who are doing a job so they can make a living to support their families. And both of those things are so false on their face. I felt compelled to go to the Commissioner's Court and respond to that last week.
So that's Bexar County Commissioner's Court
Yes.
that you're talking about, right? And you went there in person. So what? You made a couple of points. I read well, you wrote an op-ed on this as well.
Yes.
Right. And I read your op-ed, and one of the points that you made, and now I'm trying to keep my train of thought rolling here. There's so many places to go with this, so many different places. But one of the points you made in your op-ed is the equity of both sides should be following the law, right? That's one issue. And the other point that you made in your op-ed is the implication that it's okay because they're our friends and neighbors to do anything they want without without inspection or dissent from us, right? And that once again, not the America that.
Yeah. And for me, and I'd be interested in Fred's commentary on this, the nexus between support and defend and the detention center and the fact that I decided to go to Commissioner's Court was in good part driven by the fact that while Grant Moody said that we should follow the letter of the law, he's a Marine Corps officer, and he also swore to support the Constitution. And I'd like to hear your commentary on that, Fred.
Please.
Fred was also there that day.
There were about 15 of us there, I think, standing behind Martha at the Commissioner's Court. It was a lot of fun. It was enjoyable. And to point out that, just as an aside here, there's a lot of veterans and Purple Heart winners and former soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Space Force folks that have been deported too by ICE. And that just completely stuns me that they would do that. And when you have a county commissioner there saying, well, these ICE people, they're just following orders, that's the same thing that they said about the Nazis in World War II. A little bit of an aside here, my father investigated and prosecuted war crimes trials in 1945 in Dachau. And a lot of the trials they had there were not Nazis. They were German citizens or German soldiers or German civil government officials that had executed Americans. And they used the defense, well, they were just following orders. And we've seen the same sort of executions here in Minnesota. It's just astounding.
Yeah, that video is shocking. And, this is what you all served for, to protect these freedoms of ours. I don't know how my dad would feel about this. He's been gone for a long time, but he served in World War II. He brought home, I did not realize this until my mom passed away and we cleaned out her attic. I found 150 pictures my dad brought back from serving in 3rd Army headquarters, Patton headquarters in World War II.
That's where my dad was.
Really? Well, we have another conversation that we need to have then. But after, let's see if I can get that right, VE Day, after VE Day, they were allowed to go around and there were pictures of concentration camps in there. And I remember him talking about how shocked they were about what they saw. What they saw when those concentration camps were discovered, and seeing them in person, I can't imagine.
And that's
what that would be like. Yeah. And it's not that we're there today yet. Some of the philosophy, shall I say, and the practices look a whole lot.
Yeah, I've suggested to people, if you really want to be an activist on this, we quit calling them detention centers. Even quit calling them prisons and call them concentration camps, because that really is what they are.
Wow.
It's to keep them concentrated and off the streets. Yeah, they're concentration camps.
My goodness. I'm not sure how to respond to that, so I'm going to go on to the in a way that is like, that's very deep.
It's a lot to take in to think that we're responsible for that. And let us be reminded that at the end of World War II, German citizens came into those prison camps and said, Well, we weren't responsible for that. And American officers told them they were.
And here we are and here we are in 2026. So what do we want then?
We want more American citizens to look objectively at the sort of things we've been talking about today and think whether or not that's the America they want their children to grow up in. I raised my kids differently than what we're seeing happen now. And as we move forward through upcoming election cycles, I'd just like more Americans to think about what we really need to do to make this country exceptional as we always thought it was, only to find out that maybe it's not.
Yeah, that would, that word American exceptionalism.
Correct.
Right? Which I got to admit, for years I heard that. And, I understand that not everybody around the world necessarily agrees with that, but there's strong elements of truth at that in our history.
I believed it for a long time.
Right. And one of the things that's saddest to me is how we've lost that special nature of ours. Mark Carney's speech at Davos, and I think I got that right. Mark Carney's speech at Davos about, it was really interesting. I'm kind of contradicting myself because he kind of said, this was all kind of a little fake, right? Because the rules didn't apply to everyone. But I would argue back that in a lot of ways, the United States of America created a world order that was rules-based far more than it would have been without.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The United States of America. And if we didn't do it exactly right, then I'd love to have the opportunity to go back and fix those parts that were not done right. That is so in our interest, to be helping people around the world, to be finding places where we have mutual interests and align them. And, it's self-enlightened, right? But where we have mutual interests. And yet we've gotten away from that. The way we've torn down USAID just horrifies me. Voice of America.
Mm-hmm. And there was a time in the military when we talked about winning hearts and minds being part of our job. That is not the message that the Department of War is putting out now. And the mere fact that they call themselves the Department of War, I think betrays exactly what their intent is.
Yes.
But there is no Department of War legally. There's a Department of Defense. And again, I'm sure Fred and I could both go on at some point about why it's important to be called the Department of Defense.
So let's go there. I got a feeling about that. Why is it important to be called the Department of Defense?
Because originally, when I was in the Army, we were told that our mission was deterrence. And if we did our jobs really well, we could keep wars from happening. And then when George Bush came along and invaded, and you were there in that war, what was it called?
It was still the Secretary of Defense, or in the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
And, well, just going back in history, for a long time there was the department, the War Department, and there was a Secretary of War. And then we got, after World War II, we decided we were going to be a little bit more enlightened and provide for the common defense of our country and all of our allies, and that's when we made it the Department of Defense.
And that it feels a little different when you're in the middle of World War II to call it the War Department, and then to get out of World War II and say, we don't ever want this to happen again.
Yes.
Right.
There's a lot of meaning to that word.
Yeah. So, I can be a geek here, okay, on all sorts of fronts, okay, it turns out. I'm listening to the Federalist Papers right now. By the way, the reason I'm listening to the Federalist Papers is because I can't stand the news. So I can't, I'm driving in my car, I want to do something meaningful, so I'm listening to the Federalist Papers. You know what section I'm in right now? I'm in the section that talks about why the federal government needs to be able to provide for its defense as opposed to have to count on the states. Because back before the U.S. Constitution, Articles of Confederation, am I getting that right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, at least in spirit, if not literally, if I didn't exactly get the word right. Literally, the federal government had to go to the states and say, hey, you've got a share, you need to pay your share. And Alexander Hamilton is arguing why that's not a good idea. And so, you know, we've got to provide for our defense, but we need citizens behind us to believe in what we're doing.
Yes.
And I don't believe in what we're doing right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think that has so much to do with why we decided to organize support and defense, because civilians may not really understand all of that. And they may be willing to embrace this idea of the military is all about lethality and ignoring stupid rules, as the Secretary of War would say. But we've been on a glide path with this, you know. I was in an army whose job was deterrence. And then when George W. Bush came along, he said our job is,
And I think you were talking
preemption.
and you were thinking about Operation Desert Shield earlier. Is that right?
Well,
Fundamentally defensive.
Would you call that
right?
preemption or deterrence? You were there.
Desert Shield and Desert Storm was a little bit different because Saddam Hussein had already invaded Kuwait and came across the border into Saudi Arabia. So,
and we had a treaty to defend them.
Yes, and whether or not it was all about oil or whatever, but there was an overt action taken by Saddam Hussein that we decided we weren't going to stop. That was George H.W. Bush. When George W. came along, that was where the neoconservative movement had said, well, we need to, rebuild the Middle East along our democratic model, and that's where all the preemption came in.
Yeah, and preemption, at least to my military mind, is I can strike you if I just think you might be going to do something to me.
Correct.
Deterrence is I'll wait until you appear to be a clear and visible threat, and then I'll take action.
Right. But meanwhile,
there's a big difference.
But meanwhile, look at how strong we are. If you do something, you're going to regret it, right? I mean, preparing for war to keep the peace,
that's
right?
The best
I mean,
kind of deterrence.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
And now we've moved on somewhere else from even what George W. Bush established. And this is kind of in my mind, just a random, reckless license to attack anybody for any particular reason, but most of it, I think, seems to be for financial gain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the recent story of the investment from
Venezuela.
Well, there's Venezuela, and then there's also the investment that was made in the crypto. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but the person whose name I choose not to say has a crypto company, and the family has a crypto company, and it was shown there was a huge investment made. I was either days before the election or days before the inauguration. I don't remember.
Yeah, from the United Arab Emirates, I believe.
Which was it UAE? Okay.
Yeah. So essentially, it's a bundling operation.
Yeah. And a pattern of corruption. And Martha, I think you raised something. I think you did this to me last time too, where you raise this pattern over time, right? You look at George H.W. Bush, who said, "We did what we came to do. We're out." And he drew criticism for that, right? Why didn't you finish the job, right? And then his son came along and inspired by neoconservative thinking, I believe. I think that's right. He took the next step, right? And now look at where we are, right? Is kind of see a pattern over time, with maybe a little bit of break in the middle, along the way. Wow, we could keep talking about this for a while, couldn't we?
Yes, we could.
Okay. You remember I asked you all the questions, so what do we want?
Well, I'll tell you what I want.
Okay, yes.
As Miss Community Organizer 2025.
Yes.
I want people to recognize that we cannot vote our way out of this. With luck, we might be able to pull off a midterm election successfully without interference. If we don't, I have serious concern about whether in 2028, when we have another presidential election, we will be able to do that. So what I want is for people to quit thinking to themselves, well, this will pass, there'll be a new administration. No, we're well beyond that now. And the reason that veteran involvement in this is so important is because we've been places where we see these kinds of governments. We've been places where we see citizens accept whatever is going on and don't feel a responsibility for it. And we're here to warn them that we are not going to survive that. People need to get engaged today. And there are 1,000 ways to be engaged. I'm more than happy to give you a list. But you must be engaged. Sitting out is no longer an option.
I was in an event the other day where somebody looked at my wife and I, and conversation broke out at the table. It was a neutral event, shall we say? Mm-hmm. And he said, "I'm agnostic," and I just that's the worst, mm-hmm. right? Now, maybe not the worst, but it's a close second.
Well, Pericles said, "You may not believe in politics, but that doesn't mean that politics doesn't believe in you."
I knew I would have an opportunity to say thank you, Dr. Spinks, which I completely forgot to do at the top of the hour.
Yeah, you know what it is.
This is Dr. Martha Spinks, who knows Pericles, and thank you for for sharing.
Always got to show off. Sorry.
Sharing Pericles. Well, there's a lot of wisdom back there that we've swept under the rug right now. So let's keep that going. I talked about Alexander Hamilton, and you talked about Pericles. So hey. Yeah. We're good. We're good.
So there.
Okay. Hey, you said so people need to get engaged, and
yes.
My little outro speech is about people getting engaged.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe before my outro speech, how do they? Okay, for those who are listening right
mm-hmm.
now, what can they do? What's the first step?
Okay, the first step is knowing the people who are around you. If there's one thing you ought to read or look at right now, it's the work of Robert Putnam. Robert Putnam wrote a book called Bowling Alone that he published in 2000. And the reason he called it that is because he went to a bowling alley. His friend ran the bowling alley, and he said, "So how are things going now?" And the friend said, "Well, we have more people bowling than ever before, but we don't have bowling leagues anymore." So Putnam took that as a metaphor for the general breakdown of civic life, and it starts back in the 70s. People quit going to church. People quit joining the Kiwanis. Nobody just comes to your house and knocks on the door and says, "Could I have a cup of coffee?" I mean, it's unheard of. And so you can also watch an updated version of Putnam's thinking on Netflix, and it's called Join or Die. And essentially what he does is bring that up to the current time and say, you must start joining things. Go to an ice house crawl like a lot of us do on Thursday nights. Invite your neighbors over, but you have to start talking to people so that you know and trust each other. Mm-hmm. And in our current context, it's especially critical. Even if there were no issues that we have to deal with in existence, we still have experienced a tremendous breakdown of civic life, and we have to attend that, or as a human race, we're not going to get through the challenges that we're facing right now. So that's the beginning place.
So if you're in San Antonio, open your browser and type speakusa.org and hit enter, mm-hmm. okay? Or you could also look for Speak USA San Antonio and hit enter, and that will actually show you more specific mm-hmm. things. What somebody's listening and they're ready to go, like, what is that practical? Okay, so read the book, join. How mm-hmm. do you find something to join?
Well, you can call me. I'll give you my number. But what happens when you start doing things, like, for example, I heard about this ICE detention center last summer, so I just went over there and said, "What's going on here?" And
you show up and there's people there.
Well, there were some young 20-somethings who knew about this that were very passionate.
Yeah.
So they could cover a day or two, so I said, "Okay, I'll take another day."
Yeah.
And in that process, I meet them and find out what they're doing, and I meet other people and find out what they're doing. If you want to take a more organized approach, you can call the Bexar County Democratic Party. I could also give you a long list of other kinds of organizations. One of the things I think that people fear is that they'll get sucked into something they don't understand. Like I just called the 50501 planners and said, I'd like to have information about protests. And I'm afraid the next thing I know, I'm going to be out in the middle of a protest waving a sign.
Right.
It doesn't have to be
So you
that
make
way.
that call. And by the way, so I was going to
decide
mention
what you can do.
I was going to mention 5051. So no matter where you are in the country, you can look up 5051. That will almost for sure yield a result
Yes.
to connect you to people. Indivisible is another organization that occurs
Yes.
to me that is all over the country. So
Yeah.
if you see that, you know,
Look
you
for
do
a veterans organization.
you do
like
have to
Support
take
and Defend.
support and defend. Okay. And you do have to take that first step. I will tell everyone, I've said this on the podcast before, I'd never been to a protest before, but in the last year, I've been to several.
Yeah.
And boy, am I going now. You know, I want my voice. I insist my voice be
Yeah.
heard.
And,
Right?
you know, if you're a
And-
writer, write a letter to the editor. People have a tendency to think, oh, that's not much. Who will see it? But you don't know. There may be somebody who's moved by your words.
And you are an expert in writing letters to the
Yes.
editor, I think is fair to say. Yes.
I actually teach a class on how to write letters to the editor.
Okay. So maybe instead of your phone number, I'm just going to say info@speakusa.org and ask
Yeah.
for Martha.
Yes, ask for Martha.
And I will see to it that you get some instruction or something
Yeah.
related to how to write a letter to the editor. Fred, what do you think on this? Like somebody's out there, they're trying to figure out, how do I jump in? How do I get started? Hey, had you done stuff like this before?
A little.
A little.
Even when I was in the military, I wasn't necessarily protesting, but I was a little bit of a rabble-rouser about the way things I felt should have been. You know, I tended to tick off a few generals during my career.
Yeah.
I'm kind of proud of that.
But
But
shall we name who they are? No, never mind.
But you know, I think what brought me out of the closet, if you will, was going to all the different places I went to in the world and seeing how tough it was on people, and how tough it is for our economically underprivileged folks back here in the States, and all the things that we could be doing to help them, raise them out of the tough situation they're in. You know, as veterans, I feel like we still have to do that. It's still my duty to do that.
Hearts and minds.
Yes.
Right. Hearts and minds. And, you know, the more
Absolutely.
self-enlightened version is soft power, right? You know, that we make friends. In my job, I had not traveled much for 10 years. I got to travel all over the world. I had 50 trips out of the United States. And, you know, number one, that was so enlightening to me. But number two, I was proud to represent, you know, my city, my state, my country. And I'm not sure I would feel that way right now. I would be spending a lot of time apologizing for what's going on. And you know, the respect that we have, the allies that have come to our aid. The one, what is it? Which article is it in NATO? I think it's Article 5.
Article 5.
Right. Yeah. The one time that's been invoked is 9/11, and all the countries that came to our aid, and now the way we're treating NATO. The strategy around NATO, shall I say, makes me very sad. So, anyway,
May I add
but I don't want to
one-
leave. I don't want
may
to
I
end
add
on
one
that.
more thing?
Well, I don't want to end on that note anyway. So, yes, please.
I can never leave well enough alone. You know, I've emphasized how important it is to join community and be with groups. One of the things that I see a lot now, because I spend a lot of time sort of recruiting people, not for any particular job, but just to be a part of what's going on here and join your community. And I see lots of people who will say things to me like, I felt really discouraged and isolated until I started doing this thing. And I am now feeling like there is some hope and that things can be solved. Or somebody told me she quit taking meds for depression because it had just been so overwhelming. Or I feel safer because there are people that I'm with and I know that I don't have to be afraid of anything anymore. So, you know, you can look at it from a sociological perspective where it's really important to strengthen the community, but there are enormous psychological rewards for individuals, and I would encourage them to think about that.
Yeah, and I think that's a great, much better note to to wrap up on than where I was at. Do either of you any last thoughts or comments?
It's been a pleasure to be here. I think we've talked about things that are important to most Americans. We may not agree on all of them, but we got to keep fighting for what we do believe in.
And nobody ever said that humanity was a simple and straightforward process. We know it's complicated.
No.
We know about all of those human urges.
And we know that the pendulum swings.
We do. And we also know, but I think we forget sometimes, that the reason we have government is because we recognize that we need to govern human impulses. And when we created this democracy, it was a sort of like the ultimate and extraordinary expression of an idea, a little idea that had been rumbling around for a long time. And we gave life to that idea here. And we need to be so proud of that.
It's a
and
precious
so protective
gift.
of
It is a precious gift that we
Yes.
need to protect.
And it also tells me that if they could start from where they were and create this big idea, we do not have an excuse to talk about, oh, it's everything's just gone to pot. There's no way we can recover it. That is not
That's
true. But we have to be willing to do it.
I love what Heather Cox Richardson says.
Mm-hmm.
Demand your government work the way it's supposed to work.
Yes.
And I think that needs to be our attitude.
Exactly.
Alexander Hamilton, he uses big words to say it,
Mm-hmm.
but he basically talks about the passions of the human heart, to
Mm-hmm.
kind of use some of his big words, and the need to govern that, right? And
Yes.
and to figure out how we all move forward together.
And here's one last request.
Are
we
you
have
sure?
we have probably not. I'll take advantage as long as I can. But we have a primary election that starts February 17th, I think. Is it for early voting?
Sounds about right. Here in San
And-
Antonio.
Yeah, and March 3rd is election day. And I would ask every single person to show up and start practicing voting, because we're going to have to be really good at it as the year and the next 2 years go by.
All right, everyone. Get out there and vote. Get engaged. Hit the internet. Find something that you can connect to. Talk to your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Read Robert Putnam. What was the name of the book again?
Well, what's probably more accessible to everybody else is to watch this streaming
Okay.
film on Netflix called Join or Die. But his original book is called Bowling Alone, and subsequently he's continued his research.
All
There are
right.
many other titles.
All right. The Robert Putnam podcast, Join or Die.
Join or Die on
or
Netflix.
or the book, Bowling Alone.
Bowling Alone.
And the spoiler alert, don't. Don't bowl alone.
Yes.
So I want to ask our viewers today, what did you learn about our democracy? Remember, you can learn more at our website at speakusa.org, where you can understand better how to learn, connect, give, and to speak up for your democracy. Please remember to go speak for the USA. Thank you all for joining us today.